Yeah, hello and welcome to another episode of Love the Dots. The countdown is on to the Premier League. The opening night comes to you live on Thursday on Sky Sports from Cardiff. Alongside me this week is Abigail Davies and Matt Edgar. Now, we've done something a little bit different this time around. I've asked the two guys to pick out the 5 things they are most looking forward to across this Premier League campaign. I'm going to start with you, Matt. I assume you've both picked Luke Littler, to be fair. Have you picked him?
Easy one.
Yeah.
It'd be quite embarrassing if we said no.
Yeah, no, we didn't want Luke Littler. We're not
No.
bothered.
Yeah. Just him taking the Premier League by storm and seeing him week after week play amongst the elite of the sport.
Yeah, and just continue to answer those questions that keep getting posed of him. I think the one that really sort of interests me is like the people talking about potential burnout. I mean, when we talk about Luke Littler, I don't think there is a burnout. This is a year off for him, really, because when you look at last year, recorded matches, and he played a lot more than this. 290 games last year. When you take into account people like Luke Humphries on 130, going Price on 125, this is actually a year off for Luke Littler. So actually, he's going to just enjoy and embrace this, and he's going to do it on the biggest stages, which is something we know that he's always wanted. I think when we look at the decision he made around the World Championships, does he go to Lakeside or Ali Pali? The fact he chose that with no sort of real guarantee of anything, I think just shows what he wants, and that's those big stages. He's going to relish and love the Premier League. I can't see anything but him continuing the way he is. He looks unflustered. When things go wrong, he turns it around very quickly, and I'm just looking forward to enjoying him for 17 weeks. I don't think he's under any scrutiny or anything, and I'm just going to enjoy watching Luke Littler.
Yeah, and the way he's been playing, no doubt he'll enjoy it as well.
Oh, absolutely. And the first game as well against Luke Humphries, that's absolutely perfect. It is a game we've seen since the World Championship final. And
a game he's won since the World Championship final
which
as well.
makes it even more interesting, doesn't it? More ingredients and more spice to that fixture as well. So I think this is one that probably means more to Luke Humphries than it does Luke Littler, because Luke Littler's just on a continuum of brilliance, where Luke Humphries, I think, maybe wants to put a bit of a statement down here and be like, I'm the man you should be talking about.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the major media outlets, it wasn't Luke Humphries has just won the World Championship. It was Luke Littler loses World Championship final. And he's going to want to try and flip that around, and no better way of doing that than picking up a 5th big title in a row.
Yes. Right, Luke Littler, that is our first thing to look out for then. What is another thing to look out for this campaign?
I'm going to go for Rob Cross in general. I think it's absolutely hilarious that just over a year ago, he made a deal with Dan Dawson. He said, I'm not going to play any World Series events. I'm not going to play the Premier League. I don't want to play in them. I feel like I need that time off. So they had a little deal between them. Dan has now won that deal because Rob Cross is back here. But the interesting part of that is
what does he win? Tell us what he wins.
I think it was £100. Yeah. But the interesting thing about it is it just shows where Rob Cross's desire levels are now compared to a year and a half ago. He wants to be competing in these events again, these showcase events. He wants to be in them all. 2023, the best version of Rob Cross that we saw since his debut year on the circuit. He's enjoying the game again. He's putting in these ridiculous numbers. And he said towards the back end of last year, I'm feeling so good that I am going to pick up one of the big titles at the back end of this year. Now, had it not been for a ridiculous performance from Luke Humphries in the final of the Grand Slam, he would have been right. He would have looked like an absolute genius. And he came that close to doing it. And there were times during the World Championship campaign where I thought he was going to go on and do it. He looked so good. That comeback to get the better of Chris Dobie is one of the best things I have ever witnessed, and that's including what we've seen from Luke Littler. It was absolutely spectacular. So I'm really excited to see him back in the Premier League and see what he can do.
Yeah, really good point, because Rob Cross is quite often a player that goes under the radar and that we don't talk about enough. So
almost
couldn't agree
Danny
more.
Noppert effect.
Very much so, yes. What else are you looking forward to? It doesn't have to be a player, by the way.
I'm going with Luke Humphries.
Okay, we're going to go with a player.
Yeah,
right,
brilliant. Of course I am. Teed it up lovely, didn't we?
Yeah.
Right. Humphries, the journey he's on. It's such a journey. When we look a year ago, he wasn't in the Premier League, left out when he was meant to be a selection. Then we look at him getting into the top 4, guaranteeing that. Then he goes in now as the world champion and the world number 1. He's won 4 of the last big TV tournaments. I am going to not include the World Series events, which may get some scrutiny. But for me, the World Series final is the event. These are World Series qualifiers. They're just on TV. So I'm not going to include those as part of that sort of run of big TV events. Yes, we're going to have the UK Open before the conclusion of the Premier League, so that's going to be another little factor in there as well. But I'm just really interested to see if Luke Humphries is going to continue this trend, because I mentioned so often it's almost robotic for him now. He's so precise. He doesn't get carried away with his emotions. Anytime he sort of gets brought into something, he just takes a step back from that as well. And I remember speaking to a lot of people like Michael Smith. I remember I played a European tour game and I ran around the stage, belted, and he said to me straight after that, actually, I'm even telling that story wrong. It was the UK Open. I'm even telling the story
Come on,
wrong.
Matt,
And I was there. So it was the UK Open. The first time I played on the main stage, I won the first leg, taking out 110 checkout, and did 3 laps of the Reebok Stadium. And afterwards, it was like, but your performance dropped after that because you can't let it all out.
Yeah.
You've got to keep something in. And I look at what Luke Humphries is doing, and I've always tried to keep that in mind. Like, don't let everything out. Like, you can, but you need to keep some fire in there. Luke Humphries, as soon as you see him starting to go, he reins himself back. He's so aware of himself, even in that moment of pure joy or when he's just delivered what he needs to do. That being in check of his emotions, it's elite level.
Yeah, never too high, never too low. Another player?
Yeah, I thought we'd stick with that theme, given that that's what you're demanding we do. I think.
No, I didn't.
No,
I said don't do it.
I'm joking. No,
Do what you want, all right?
I'm going to go with Nathan Aspinall, just because we've not seen the match play version of the Asp for quite some time, and it's quite interesting hearing his reflections on the back end of last year, not playing in many Players' Championship events, therefore missing out on the Players' Championship finals. And even though he was practicing really well with Michael Smith, seemed to be in a very good place in the build-up to the World Championship, I think now that he reflects on that, he maybe feels he did things wrongly, and, you know, he feels he needs to go to these events now just to know what form he's going to turn up to majors in. I think sometimes he was questioning, you know, yes, I'm practicing well, but what am I going to be like when I get up onto that big stage? So it's going to be interesting to see over the course of the Premier League whether he's going to Wigan and Leicester in between to play on the floor, and how much of an impact that has on his game when he gets up onto the big stage. I think there were times where, you know, he was putting a bit too much pressure on himself. I think he's openly said himself that he was putting too much pressure on himself to deliver on the big stage, because he was going, I know I'm practicing really well, but I need to show everyone that. So maybe that pressure will be alleviated somewhat now. It's going to be very fascinating to find out. And I hope we see a very good year for the Asp.
Yeah,
So.
couldn't agree more. Our 5th thing.
Well, I'm looking forward to like the 17-week process where we get to see the form of Peter Wright.
I like it.
How'd you go and you thought I was going somewhere different?
Yeah, I was like, hold on a sec. What's happening here?
Yeah, he's going to talk about not a player. But I think this is going to be great because there's question marks over Peter Wright, obviously. When we look at his statistics, he's coming down towards that top 64 position now 46th best player in the world, according to stats. So with that in mind, what does Peter Wright do this year? We're going to see him for 17 weeks under microscopes, and he is going to be under microscopes, especially now with what's come out recently in regards to the interviews and the opinions that he's gave. He's probably going to have people scrutinising him, probably a bit heavier than it would have happened before, because he's just put the attention on himself. So there's that's going to be interesting. We also know the story about him boxing up the trophies and putting those away and coming out to be a new version of Peter Wright 3.0, because that was version 2, or was it version 4? It might be version 17 actually, I think now, Peter Wright. But whatever version it is, it's going to be a new version. What does he settle on? Is he still going to be changing darts? Because apparently he's thrown all those out as well, which I think he probably needed 2 skips at the house to fill up to get them taken away. But what darts does he use? Is he actually going to stick with something? He said this many times before and never done it, but is this the moment now where he goes, actually, I'm going to stick to a sort of setup? So there's so many questions, and we've got 17 weeks where we're going to get to the answers, and I don't think it's going to be consistent all the way through.
No.
I think he's going to start with something, change to something else. He might go into it with one sort of mindset, and then that might change depending on results. You know, if they start going well, Does he then get confident in what he's doing and go back to what he's doing before? I'm going to start changing, look for perfection. Because I think this is where a lot of players go wrong. And what we tend to do as players is we have 98% of the game there, and we worry too much about the 2% we haven't got, that actually we then start having 96%, 94%, and we start going backwards. And I think that's what's happening with Peter Wright. He got so close, and he was right at the very top of the sport and the top of the rankings, but then probably worried about that 1-2% where it doesn't exist. Perfection in this sport does not exist. 100 average. We sit here and go, 100 average, brilliant. What a great performance. But actually, you've still missed 66% of the time the target.
No, all right, Matt.
There's no such thing as perfection in this sport. It's managing disappointment, essentially, and trying to pick out the positives. And that's something that I don't feel he's doing at the moment. He's not finding those positives, and he's looking to try and flip that percentage.
Well, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because when you speak to him, he's positive.
Yeah.
It was, speaking to him after the Worlds and before Bahrain and the first World Series event of the year, he was like, no, ready to go. This is going to be great. I've been inspired by Luke Littler. I've taken the trophies out. This is it. I'm ready. He actually said, I'm ready to fill this trophy room with the title I'm about to win in Bahrain. And it was like, oh, okay. Yeah. You couldn't be more confident.
I get what he's doing and why he's doing it. Words are words. I've been on that playing side of things before, and you've done an interview and you don't feel right, and I was hurt at times playing games. And going into them, it's like, I'm not going to mention that because my opponent might be watching. And you've always got to remember that factor as well, that the players are aware they're not just talking to the audience when they're talking, that they're also talking to their opponents, and they're aware of that. And I've done this. When I used to go into European Tour events, I used to always monitor my opponent's social media. I remember Stuart Kellett. I was playing him once at a European Tour, and he put on there, not been playing too well, looking forward to try and get back on track, and he was such a negative post. I thought, brilliant.
I've got you. I have got you. Yeah.
Love a bit of that. I end up winning 6-1.
Yeah.
And it's like, you've just told me you don't feel good. So I know if I get ahead early here, this isn't going to be a positive game for you. So players are aware of that side of things as well. So they will not be fully honest with how they feel going into a tournament.
Yeah, it is going to be a fascinating 17 weeks. Let us know if you agree with the guys. Write your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember, doesn't have to be a player. Can be whatever, anything you're looking forward to, you write it in that comment section below. And make sure you watch first night of the Premier League as well. Thursday, the 1st of February, live from Cardiff, 7 o'clock, Sky Sports main event. And we'll be back for the next episode very soon. We'll see you then.